It starts as something small, a glance across a Zoom call, a voice note that lingers longer than expected, a late-night text that suddenly feels different. Before you realize it, you're in a relationship with someone hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away, and you ask yourself, can this really work? Long-distance relationships are one of modern love's strangest paradoxes. You're connected, yet separated, emotionally entangled, yet physically apart. You talk more than most couples, but touch less. You plan more deliberately, but live in limbo. It's intimacy, suspended in space, and it defies so many of our instincts about what love is supposed to look like. But in a world where work, education, and opportunities scatter us across cities and continents, long-distance relationships aren't rare. They're increasingly normal. Technology has made it easier than ever to connect with someone on the other side of the planet, and harder than ever to ignore the ache of missing them. According to a study published in the Journal of Communication, over 3 million married couples in the US alone live apart due to circumstances like military deployment, jobs, or immigration policies. Among dating couples, the number is even higher, especially among Gen Z and millennials, who often meet online before they meet in person. Love, once rooted in proximity, has evolved. We now fall for voices through headphones, for typed words and video calls, for people we've never sat next to on a couch. In a strange way, distance has become part of modern desire, not just an obstacle, but a feature of how intimacy develops. There's something thrilling about anticipation, about imagining instead of knowing, about loving someone not despite the space, but through it. But that doesn't make it easy. Long-distance relationships demand more intention than most. Every interaction becomes a choice. Every call, every message, every visit is deliberate, and this intention can sometimes make the love feel purer, stripped of distractions, built on communication rather than convenience. You don't stay in a long-distance relationship by accident. You choose it, repeatedly. Still, there's no denying that the structure of distance changes how love functions. You learn to love someone in fragments, in scheduled phone calls, in countdowns until the next visit, in digital intimacy, in longing. You don't get the luxury of casual togetherness, the lazy Sunday afternoons, the spontaneous touch, the ordinary silence. What you do get, though, is something that philosopher Alain de Botton once referred to as the romantic idealization of absence. When your partner isn't around, your mind fills in the gaps. You remember their best qualities. You imagine reunions. You miss what's missing, and in that absence, love can deepen, or distort, or both. That's the paradox. Distance stretches you, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. It pushes you to grow, to reflect, to communicate better, but it also exposes the limits of longing, the frustration of time zones, the reality that love alone doesn't always erase the ache of solitude. In the next part, we'll dive into those emotional complexities, the communication struggles, the loneliness that creeps in, and the challenge of balancing two separate lives while trying to maintain one shared connection. Because for all its beauty, long-distance love isn't just romantic, it's demanding, and understanding that demand is the first step toward navigating it well. Long-distance love asks for a kind of emotional endurance that few people talk about. It's not just the physical space between two people, it's the uncertainty that comes with it, the missed birthdays, the time zone misalignments, the silence on the other end of the phone when all you want is presence. The love is real, but so is the loneliness. In any relationship, communication is the connective tissue, but when you're miles apart, it's no longer optional. It becomes everything. Without the casual conversations that happen during a shared dinner or walk through the park, you're forced to communicate deliberately. And while that can lead to deeper conversations, it can also create pressure. Every message can feel like a test. Are we still close? Do they still care? Why didn't they reply yet? Distance magnifies everything. A small misunderstanding becomes a source of anxiety. A missed call can feel like rejection. When you're already vulnerable, your mind fills in the gaps, and not always kindly. Psychologist John Bowlby's attachment theory reminds us that feeling emotionally secure requires consistent reassurance, especially when our attachment figure is far away. In long-distance relationships, that reassurance can feel delayed or diluted, not because love is lacking, but because timing and technology simply can't replicate presence. And then there's the matter of time. You live your day while they sleep. You wake up to their good night. Your lives begin to drift in parallel, together in theory, apart in experience. You start to wonder how much of this connection lives in memory and projection, and how much of it is grounded in shared reality. This is where loneliness seeps in, not just from being without them, but from realizing how much of your emotional life is unfolding alone. This isolation can be particularly difficult when you're going through something challenging, a bad day at work, a family emergency, or even something as simple as needing a hug. Distance denies you the most instinctive form of comfort, touch. In long-distance love, emotional support has to travel through screens, and sometimes, no matter how loving the message, it still feels like something is missing. Balancing your own needs becomes another challenge, because in trying to keep the relationship strong, you might find yourself putting parts of your life on hold, saying no to new opportunities, avoiding deep friendships that might distract you, living in a kind of emotional holding pattern until you're reunited. And even if that reunion is on the calendar, the wait can start to feel like a sacrifice, like you're putting more of your life in the future than in the present. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "Hope is a passion for the possible, but hope, when stretched too thin, can also become exhaustion, especially when you're the one always adjusting, always traveling, always initiating." Long-distance relationships need reciprocity. When one person starts to carry more of the weight, emotionally or logistically, resentment can begin to grow, even in the most loving dynamic. And yet, the greatest emotional challenge may not be the distance itself, but the constant awareness of it. You live in a dual state, connected but separate, loved but lonely, certain but uncertain. It's an emotional contradiction you carry every day, and it can wear you down if you don't have the tools and the shared understanding to face it together. Still, not all outcomes are bleak. For many, the very act of enduring these emotional challenges becomes a source of pride, of resilience, of deeper intimacy. But the only way to truly benefit from the struggle is to name it, to talk about it, to validate the difficulty instead of romanticizing the pain. Because love can survive distance, but not if it's built on silence. In the next part, we'll explore how distance can actually deepen connection, how space, when navigated intentionally, can cultivate trust, appreciation, and long-term growth. Because the paradox of long-distance love is this: what separates you can also be what strengthens you, if you let it. There's a quiet strength that forms in long-distance relationships, not because they're easy, but because they demand something deeper: patience, trust, communication that goes beyond convenience. While most people imagine distance as an obstacle, it can also become a mirror, reflecting not just the relationship, but each person's inner world. One of the most surprising benefits of long-distance love is the space it gives for personal growth. Without the constant presence of your partner, you're often forced to face yourself, to sit with your own fears, insecurities, dreams. The relationship becomes less about merging identities and more about building parallel paths that support one another. That space, uncomfortable as it can be, creates room for reflection, for autonomy, for becoming someone worth coming home to. In a culture obsessed with instant gratification, distance forces you to slow down, to be intentional, to choose quality over quantity. And in that slowness, something unexpected can happen. You start to value connection more deeply. Every text becomes more meaningful, every call more intimate, every visit something sacred. You stop taking love for granted. You learn how to hold someone emotionally before you ever hold them physically. Psychologist Esther Perel writes, "Love rests on two pillars: surrender and autonomy." Our need for togetherness exists alongside our need for separateness. In long-distance relationships, this duality becomes real. The paradox is no longer theoretical. It's your everyday life, and if you can embrace that, you build a foundation far more stable than one based only on proximity. Of course, this doesn't happen by accident. Thriving at a distance requires deliberate strategies, ways to keep intimacy alive even when you're apart. It means creating rituals, a weekly video date, morning voice notes, reading the same book together, or planning future trips. These habits become emotional anchors, reminders that love is still active, even across time zones. Shared goals also matter. When you're navigating uncertainty, Having a vision for the future is essential. Whether it's a date for your next visit or a long-term plan to close the distance, a shared why can carry you through the difficult whens. That vision isn't just romantic, it's stabilizing. It gives shape to the weight. It turns longing into purpose. And then there's the emotional muscle that distance builds. Trust. Not the naive, blind kind, but a trust born from repeated honesty, consistency, and communication. When you can't rely on physical reassurance, you have to rely on emotional presence. You have to show up, not with gifts or grand gestures, but with your truth. And in that process, intimacy often deepens. Setting healthy boundaries becomes another critical part of the equation. Just because you're in love doesn't mean you pause your own life. The strongest long-distance relationships are the ones where both people keep living, growing, investing in their own lives, and bring that energy back to the relationship. Being apart doesn't mean putting yourself on hold. In fact, it's the opposite. Still, it's important to remain realistic. Not all long-distance relationships work, and not all should. But the goal isn't to eliminate the challenge, it's to honor the reality of it, while choosing to move through it together. That means acknowledging when it's hard, being honest about needs, and having the courage to change course when necessary. In the end, long-distance love is not a lesser form of love, it's just a different one that requires different tools, a different kind of patience, and a deep commitment to both yourself and the other. When approached with honesty, presence, and shared vision, distance can actually strengthen the connection rather than weaken it. Philosopher Khalil Gibran once wrote, "Let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you." Maybe that's the ultimate paradox of love across distance, that the very space which separates you, when honored with care, can become the space in which love breathes more freely.